Welcome back to Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers. I am Sam Federman. Jonathan Lidskin is not with me this afternoon. He'll be back soon, but we are here with a special guest, High Point head coach Flynn Clayman. Coach, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, you guys obviously made a lot of noise this season over the last couple seasons, and you particularly made a pretty loud one right after beating Wisconsin. You called out a lot of, not by name, but a lot of high majors for not scheduling you guys and not scheduling Miami, Ohio, not scheduling really good mid-major teams. And now you guys have a schedule that is much more competitive this coming season. You're playing LSU, you're playing George Mason, St. Louis, Washington State, Liberty, a lot of high-level mid-major teams. How important is it, do you think, for high-level mid-major teams to keep scheduling each other? And then obviously, we'll get into the high major discourse in a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that people should take away from my little, obviously I was in a place that was unreal in that moment, like being a first year head coach in a very high expectation job, being favored in literally every single game we played that season. Not There wasn't one game where we opened the game as the underdog, which is a tough, it's a tough pressure situation. Then we win a game like that. Obviously, my mind was all over the place, but really what I was trying to say is, man, like, don't have an opinion on teams that don't get an opportunity to compete. Like, I don't want our game of college basketball to become a game that's based off solely computer rankings and opinions. Like, the thing that made college basketball special is that we got on the court and we played. And we figured it out that way. Like people say college football is at an all-time high. And, I think part of the reason it is because they do have a quality playoff now where every team does have a chance. Like there was a point in time when college football was all about talking and who we think is the best, and you never really got to see certain teams play against certain teams. And that made college basketball special, and I want to keep it that way. We know the biggest and the best schools are always going to come out on top 99.9% of the time, but the fact that you have a chance to compete is what makes our game special, and I just want to keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot up here with like the Fairfield women's staff, kind of similar to you guys, pretty dominant within their league, and they've gotten to a point where high major teams are starting to trust that they are not going to be a drain on the resume, and they're scheduling them. They played Villanova last year, they played North Carolina, Iowa. Now you guys get LSU on the schedule, and you're obviously probably getting closer to that point where high major teams are trusting that you're going to be at least a quad two game if you play them at their place, or definitely quad two if you play them neutral. Not that they would probably want to do that very much. How much do you think that comes down to the program's consistency over the last 3 years versus the NCAA tournament win itself versus your rant afterwards, kind of putting people on the spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the rant, I had a chance to kind of clarify it the next day. It's like I think the net system can just be cleaned up a little bit in terms of like when we're in that 80 ranked range, you just can't get games 80, 90, 100. But I think there's a massive difference between being a quad three and being in the 80s to 90s and then being closer to 160. Like there's a big difference between those teams. And that's not really a accurate measure of who's playing who. When you have only like if you had say you had double the quads that we have right now, you'd probably have say you had eight quads, you'd probably have a better ranking system for who's who. You know what I'm saying? But to only have four, like there's such a big difference between teams in the same quad. But it was on us to get into that quad two range, and that's at least where we sit right now. Like now, but it's just a funny system. It's not a system that really makes a ton of sense. Like for example, Will Wade will always step up and play a good quad two team like us, and he's done that over the years, right? But so last year he scheduled Liberty, but in the end, Liberty had the lower net than we did, right? But you're just going off like preseason rankings when you have a bunch of new players coming in from all different places. Do we really know that High Point's going to be a quad two? Do we know that we might not even be a quad one? There's so many question marks that go behind it that I really think it just stands in the way of us having good games. Like, let's play good games. I think back to a couple years ago, like Auburn went on the road and played App State. App State's a solid program. Well, they didn't come out of there with a W. It's hard for those teams to go on the road and win. If we can give them some kind of incentive to play, not just games where we're always going on the road, but playing some neutral games, playing some home games. I think it will help our game in total. But then what really got me ticked off when I became the head coach was nobody would even let us come play on their home court. That to me is where you're really shutting people out. And then I heard things about our team all year. Just, look, we led the nation in point differential this year. Okay, we nobody beat their opponent worse than High Point did. We were third in the country in points per game. We were first in the country in steals per game. Okay, we came into the NCAA tournament with the longest win streak in the country, and most people just said, "Well, they're not very good. They haven't played people." I don't think they got a realistic depiction of our program because we just didn't have the chance to play people, and that's where that came from. And I think we validated that it wasn't a one game thing when we played Arkansas so tough in the next game.
Yeah, and kind of when I've talked about High Point over the last 3 years, it's kind of the conversation is driven by your guys' offense. You've had higher ranking offense than defense by a good margin each of the last 3 years, but it's kind of looked different every year if you kind of look at the Ken Pom page and if you look at the synergy profiles, and it's all kind of your personnel based. A lot of ISO and roll man action year two was a lot of transition this year. But what are kind of the overarching principles that guide your offense, regardless of personnel? And then how do you decide how you want to attack it with your personnel?
Yeah, I mean, we're analytically driven in a lot of ways. Like we want to shoot threes, we want to get close twos to the basket, ideally off 2 feet. We want to get to the free throw line a lot. Those are huge things for us. The turnover battle is huge. We dominated that battle as good as anybody in the country, also because we did it on both ends. We didn't turn the ball over, and then we turned people over on the other end. We spend our whole summer just working on our free play motion. So we don't work on plays. We work on spacing. We work on reading defenses. We don't even really implement our full defense in the summer because I want them to read different defenses. So I want them being okay doing something that might not be our particular defense. And this was Coach Huss's. I kind of just kept his model going. So this is what he wanted to do when he came here. I'm assuming Creighton does very similar to how we do. So we spend our whole summer just working on skill development and our free play motion. In our free play motion, we're showing our guys our spacing that we want. We're showing them the shot selection we want. And then when we get back in September, then we're able to start putting in some specific plays and things that we want to attack. And then I think you hit it on the head with the subtle differences. Like we had Bodo, who was a lob threat, just an unstoppable, really lob threat. And then this year we had a great big man who was just completely different game in Owen. Very skilled, very high IQ. He was almost like a quarterback center at times, PG center, whatever you want to call it. And we adjusted to him. And that's what you have to do. Like I love guys who catch lobs, and we've got a couple really good lob threats again this year. But I think the job of the coach is to adjust to your talented players, and we'll always do that. And we did that for Owen last year.
Does that kind of approach in the summer kind of inform the what you observe in the summer? Does that inform which types of plays you're going to put in the fall?
For sure. That's exactly what I'm doing. It's observing. Like we watch a lot of these kids film, obviously, but we don't get the same in-depth recruitment that you used to have where you'd watch a kid for years. You watch a kid for years before he comes in. You know so much more detail about him. Now we know a lot of details about our players, but we're going to spend the summer observing and seeing who plays well together, what actions kind of work well with this player or this combination. We have a ton of depth too, so that kind of changes different lineups, running different things. But you hit it on the head. I try to just kind of sit back and observe in the summer. I don't really try to even establish a pecking order of like who's our starters, who's our reserves. I kind of just leave it where everybody's on the same, status in the summer, and we're all kind of figuring it out together.
Yeah, you mentioned Bodo. You guys obviously played the drop with him, and that you're not forcing a ton of turnovers in that. And then this year it changes. You force, I think, eighth most turnovers in the country. I think you had the best turnover margin in the country as a whole. And that obviously shifts the math for you guys. And now you're kind of leaning even heavier into getting just some longer wings in your program right now, that can kind of be a little more switchable than what you guys had previously. Is kind of the goal for you when you're building, if you had like your perfect world roster, would that be the goal for you to kind of build out a switchable defense, or is it just kind of the way the chips fell?
Yeah, I mean, I think any coach in just the most perfect world would be able to switch every single thing, and there would be no disadvantages to your switching. Everybody's able to guard everybody, right? That would be perfect. Um, In a perfect, we have a roster this year that I do think I think you're right. Like if you've studied our roster, like we do have longer, more athletic wings, generally speaking. We're deeper, kind of at that wing forward, Terry Anderson type guy, who can really switch and guard multiple things. I think a lot of it just comes down to your big man too. Like, are you going to switch with the five? Or can the five, can he get out and hedge? Does he have to sit back and drop? Can he do like Owen did and kind of fly all around from taking away the baseline to scrambling? Like Owen was such a cheat code with the our ability to scramble because he thought like a guard thought. Um, but we do have a roster that can switch a lot of things this year, and so and we did quite a bit of switching last year, but we had very small. We were very small, and we started the season. I had to make a change in our starting lineup because we were a little too small for us to win at the start of the year with the guys that I was starting. We went a little too far on just the offensive side. Um, this year's team has a chance to have, let's just use, who's going to start? I don't know, but we have 6'7", 6'8" wings, like a bunch of them. And then we've got a super athletic point guard in CJ Brown, and then we've got a veteran guard in Conrad Martinez who's strong as heck, who can battle people. So we could see more switching, but that's the toughest defense to attack is a team that can really switch everything and there's no advantages.
Yeah, and kind of expanding on that, you guys being able to go out there and get a bunch of guys who have that trait, the ability to switch and guard multiple positions. Kind of obviously, you guys have probably, not probably, definitely the biggest budget for roster in your conference. You're essentially playing a different game than the rest of your league in that sense. And kind of how do you manage that to still spend smartly and coherently when that's kind of when you have all of those options on the table that maybe the rest of your league doesn't have?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've recruited now in multiple situations. So I've recruited at Southern Utah where we just were kind of trying to figure it out, and we didn't have a ton, and we were probably on the lower end of budget and all that sort of stuff. And then as we come here, this thing has sort of snowballed into a different type of recruiting than I was used to. I felt this is the first time this off season where I felt like I was selecting, not recruiting per se. It was more like, okay, all these guys want to play for High Point. Let's pick who's the ones that fit best for us. So this is honestly the first offseason I had that. Even last offseason, we didn't have that. Maybe had Coach Huss stayed, we would have had that. But with the coaching change and the uncertainty of the new young coach and all that, it still wasn't that last year. Um, but it's all relative. So like we'll be recruiting a kid and he'll have a Big Ten or an SEC on the other line offering him more than we're offering him. So there's still always that competition that's going on. But you are right in the fact that the majority of the kids that we recruited probably aren't going to be kids that are being recruited by a ton of other Big Souths. I saw a couple guys that we really liked did sign in this league. Like there's some really good guys that signed at a couple of these schools, and these guys do a tremendous job of putting together rosters. But when you have a situation like ours, you're really where I see the biggest separation for us is the depth. Once you start getting to that bench and then sometimes even third string, that's just something that a lot of schools in our league can't have. And that's been a huge advantage for us the last two conference tournaments. I mean, we were down, if you look back to our first breakthrough of the NCAA tournament the year before this, we were down 15 points in the finals against Winthrop. We subbed out our starting five, and our backup five won that game for us. So that's where you see the real separation when you have a resources is the depth.
Is there a certain archetype that you feel maybe is kind of the type of guy that you can go after with your resources in your league that maybe isn't the type of guy that a high major would want to stick a ton of resources into, but would obviously be a really good fit in the Big South? What are those archetypes for you, and do you try and go after those guys?
Yeah, I mean, we've, it's going to sound corny, but like the number one thing that we look for is high character. And all these coaches say that, but I think people could feel looking at our program like we weren't just a team that was just a bought team. We were a team of guys that were in it for each other, that were trying to win for each other, that cared about High Point. Um, and that just starts with getting high character guys. And I played pro basketball overseas, and I know what it's like for guys to start getting real checks every month. And when guys start getting checks every month, character becomes even more important. It really does. It introduces a whole nother element to this thing, and it gets really easy for a guy to get selfish and say, "Let me get these numbers. I don't care about the team. My next contract." So it starts with the high character. In terms of the type of players, we are analytically driven, so a lot of the guys that we like, a lot of other schools like. And then it's funny because every offseason that I've been recruiting, more and more schools pay attention to the analytics side of it and start recruiting the kind of guys that we love recruiting. I mean, when the portal first opened, I got a couple steals in there that like would never happen now. Like a couple guys that went to Southern Utah that coaches just weren't even looking at. And if coaches now would see their Ken Palm offensive rating and whatnot, like they would recruit them 100% now. Um, but it's evolved to where a lot of coaches now understand how to utilize all that stuff. So we use the analytics, but we also have a really good track record of guys coming in sort of inefficient, and we turn them into efficient players. We've had a ton of guys come in here and improve their offensive ratings by like 30 points playing for us. But I think it starts and finishes with character. Like I can't coach a guy to be more efficient if he's not going to want to be coachable, and that's character. We make guys play off 2 feet. We make them make the simple play. We make them drill 3-point shots. If you love shooting a shot fake one dribble step in the 3-point line two, I'm going to teach you to shoot a shot fake one dribble side step three. Those are just little differences that we make with guys' games, but you have to be a high character kid to be coachable that way. So that's the number one thing we focus on in the portal.
Yeah, obviously we know High Point. Great synergy between you guys as a program and your administration, your president. Kind of. So, how does that impact your fundraising process as a whole compared to maybe what you did at Southern Utah and what your friends across the country are doing? So, what does your fundraising process look like?
Well, High Point University, I mean, I would have to go on for hours. It's truly special place. Everything you're seeing in basketball is just like kind of the front porch because a lot of people are so interested in basketball. But if you peel back the layers, like all our academic programs, top 25 in the country, our housing, top 10 in the country. Heck, we were voted the best run university in the country 2 years in a row by Princeton Review. Okay, this place runs like clockwork. The most important and special thing for our university about our run was the fun that the students got to have, and how they got to travel to the games, and our president's willingness to make that about the students and charter flights out there, and then to hear the student experiences after, about really kids telling me how they're going to remember those days for the rest of their lives, going with their friends to Portland to watch their college play. I think that goodwill right there with our students leads to a lot of good fundraising. Like we treat our kids the right way. We have a great university. We're a place that people want to support. Like it's all started with Dr. Cubane's vision. He is the tireless worker. I work really hard at this thing. I don't think I've seen anybody. I mean, I don't come close to working as hard as that guy. Like if you sent him an email right now, he's gonna send you an email back personally at 4 in the morning. I'm telling you, if not by tonight. And that goes, I'm not joking. He is working, 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 working. And it trickles down. And, that leads to people wanting to give because they support our cause. And we have great values here. It's a great university, and it's all just snowballed into what you see now.
Kind of going back to your roster, you mentioned earlier you brought in CJ Brown, an athletic point guard, NCAA tournament experience at South Florida. What do you think kind of drew him to you guys and why obviously you guys won, but I'm sure he had options to play at higher conference levels. And for you guys, what is the type of impact you're looking at for him in the Big South?
Yeah. So we have a certain talent level that we want to recruit, obviously. And being in the mid-major level, some kids just kind of weed themselves out quick because a lot of them are just like, we don't want to consider that conference. But there's a whole another group of kids that says, forget, a conference or a mid-major or anything. I'm going to look at your system, your program, my opportunity to play. And that's what CJ looked at. Okay, this is a very up-tempo offense. This is 90 points per game. They lost a guard who was just torching, Arkansas in the NCAA tournament, right? All those great things. And then on top of that, his former coach from South Florida is our top assistant, and Ben Fletcher. So, the year before Coach Hoskins was there, Ben Fletcher was his head coach. So they have a great relationship. That probably got it over the edge. Honestly, it's just Coach Fletcher's recruitment with him. But we were able to come to the table with just a great opportunity of playing in one of the best offenses in the country, with a great opportunity to play a ton. I mean, you've seen how it goes for a lot of kids. If you pick the wrong high major situation, your career can get derailed pretty quickly. So he's looking at being one of the best players in the league. He's super talented, and I think Coach Fletcher got it over the hump. But we're just really happy to have him here.
Coach, you won the Jewish Coach of the Year in a stacked field. What does that mean to you? And also, how important do you feel it is for young coaches of any background to have organizations like the JCA or the Asian Coaches Association, Black Coaches Association, et cetera, to connect with, learn from, and then have the guiding light of those coaches in the same background?
Yeah, I mean, it was a true honor. First of all, true honor. I went to Aliyah, made Aliyah, went to Israel for 3 years, played there. Great experience, learned so much. Just so thankful for my time there, and really, quite frankly, learned a lot about the game of basketball. There's a lot of really good coaches. I got to play for Oded for a while, Oded Katash, learned some things from him, just taking mental notes like Dan Shamir. I spent a few weeks with him. And then it's just a great basketball country, and just a great country in general. And then those groups is so important because coaching is tough, man. It's a really, it's a lot of guys chasing their dream. Like, and for the majority of everyone in this thing, there's not going to be a ton of money involved, unless you kind of, it takes a while to even really build up a good career. So you need that support system. There's a lot of tough times, a lot of tough years. I mean, we're talking. It's only 9 years ago that I was, making a couple $100s a month and sleeping on an air mattress, just to try to make it in this business. And there's so many other coaches doing that right now. Those support systems help get you through. They're your network. The people that you're networking with are going to move up with you in this business. They're going to become your lifelong friends. So, very thankful for all those organizations, and especially JCA and their support of me. And that's what coaching is all about, is just looking out for each other. And those groups help a ton.
After working with him at High Point, what do you think will make Coach Huss successful at Creighton?
Coach Huss is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. He's one of the most loyal people I've ever met. If you help him, he's going to bend over backwards to try to pay you back more. He's a very smart basketball mind. I mean, he played for two great coaches in college. He played for Dana Altman and Greg McDermott. He just played for Dana Altman. I'm thinking of Antoine Young on our staff. He played for both, but Coach just played for Altman, but he worked for McDermott. So he's just got a great basketball pedigree. Um, and I just think all those things you combine them, it's like, how are you not going to win? Like, I mean, the way I run a program here, I mean, I had great ideas from before, but he really taught me the details of how to run a program. And I kind of just run my program the same way he did. Um, I have no doubt that he's going to be successful there. Obviously, now you're talking about some of the most serious competition, and Rick Pitino and Dan Hurley, and that's like some of the best of all time. So that's what that is. But like, I expect them to be competing for the top of the Big East every year, being in the NCAA tournament every year, winning games in the tournament every year. I have no doubt about that. He checks every box, so it'd be hard for him not to succeed.
Coach, the last question we always ask coaches is what defines a successful season for you this coming season or this season. I'm especially interested to hear from you on that because you've already set the bar so high.
hmm Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be the same thing that I said before last year. And it's like people don't like the answer because it's kind of cliched, but it's why we got to where we got because we actually live it out and it's not just talk. Um, our goal is to have the best practice every single day, to have the best rep every single rep. I cannot tell you like a goal of wins, losses. Like even last year, everybody on the outside saying your goal is to get to the NCAA tournament again. That's what everyone's saying. Our goal is to get to March Madness. Well, when we were playing against Wisconsin, were we just satisfied to be there? No, our goal was to get to 32. When we were in the round of 32, were we just happy? Were we like goal met? No, like our goal was to get to the Sweet 16. So my only win-loss goal that I'll ever have is to win a national title. Okay. But our goal is to win every rep, win every day, to have the best culture in the country. If we do those things, then we're going to max out our win-loss, record as the best we can.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time on Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Steelers.
Thanks for having me.